Rain slammed against the steel deck of the battleship as alarms blared in the distance. Cadet Rhea stood soaked and still, eyes fixed ahead, heart pounding louder than the sirens. Moments ago, she had been part of the crew, brilliant, quiet, underestimated. Now she was being dragged before the admiral in front of everyone. Her crime? Disobeying a direct order. Her punishment? Immediate expulsion. Stripped of her badge, she said nothing. But in her silence, there was something unshakable. Something the admiral hadn't seen yet. The crew whispered as she was escorted out. Some called her reckless. Others called her dangerous. No one understood why she had gone against protocol. Why she had activated a dormant piece of code hidden deep inside the ship's control system. A code no one remembered existed, except her. For years, Rhea had worked in the shadows of the Navy's top brass, quietly absorbing, learning, and decoding. She wasn't just a cadet. She was a systems prodigy with a gift for cyber defense and deep-level naval programming. And while others memorized instructions, she questioned everything, including the ship's aging missile system, long believed to be decommissioned. But then something unexpected happened. Seconds after she was expelled, the ship's radar lit up. Unidentified objects, fast-moving, unmarked, appeared on the horizon. The command room erupted in confusion. And then, just as panic started to spread, it happened. The missile bay doors, long sealed shut, creaked open. Lights blinked to life. Targeting systems began to lock. The admiral froze, eyes wide. No one had touched the launch controls. No one even knew they could still work, except Rhea. Somewhere off the ship, in the shadows of exile, she had already triggered the impossible. Her code dismissed, ignored. Forgotten was now the only thing standing between survival and destruction. But what exactly had she unlocked? And why? That's what they were about to find out. 12 hours earlier, Rhea had been sitting alone in the data bay, deep below the ship's main deck. She wasn't part of the senior crew, but she had been given limited clearance to monitor. Systems quiet, focused, always unnoticed. That's how she liked it. But that night, she noticed something no one else did. A hidden signal buried beneath harmless diagnostics. At first, it looked like a glitch. But as she traced it deeper, a pattern began to form, one that pointed to an external breach attempt. Someone or something had tried to access the ship's inactive missile system. She reported it immediately, but the response was cold. The admiral brushed it off, calling it a ghost in the wires. When she insisted, she was told to stand down. That was her first warning, but she didn't stop. Instead, she went back to the data logs, combed through decades-old files, and uncovered something shocking. A classified emergency override system, known only by a handful of engineers who had long since left the Navy. It wasn't supposed to work anymore, but it did. Rhea wrote a protective line of code. A digital lock designed to activate only if the ship came under real threat. She didn't ask for permission. She knew she wouldn't get it. The Navy didn't like surprises, especially not from low-level cadets. But what she didn't know was that her actions had triggered silent alarms within the ship's command chain. She was just seen as a rule breaker, she was now considered a liability. The expulsion wasn't random, it was calculated. They wanted her gone before she discovered too much, but they were already too late. The code was live. And now, with the radar screaming and missile bays waking from their slumber, the very system she was expelled for had begun its countdown, and she was the only one who knew how to stop it or control it. The bridge was in chaos. Officers scrambled between terminals, shouting over one another as the ship's systems flickered with warnings. Target locks were appearing on the main screen. 7 unknown vessels closing in fast. They weren't broadcasting any ID, and they weren't responding to hails. The admiral stood frozen, his voice low but sharp, demanding answers no one could give. Down in the lower deck, engineers were trying to override the missile bay activation, but every command was blocked. "This isn't from our system," one of them whispered. "It's single quotes S ... embedded. Someone hardwired this years ago." And then someone said her name. Rhea. That's when the admiral's face changed. The one person they had pushed out, the cadet they called unstable, was the only one who could control what was happening. She had locked the missile system into a defensive state, and unless she was found, the ship's fate was no longer in Navy hands. But Rhea wasn't far. She hadn't left the ship. Not really. She had hidden herself in the forgotten maintenance corridors where the old wires still hummed and where no one ever looked. She was watching, listening, and waiting. Her code was doing exactly what it was meant to do: wake up the ship's ancient defenses only if there was a confirmed threat. And now there was. The approaching vessels weren't just unknown, they were armed. But something was wrong. The system wasn't just waking up, it was escalating. Faster than she'd predicted. The targeting wasn't stopping at the incoming. ShipSit was expanding, looking for any heat signature not logged in the last 6 months. Someone had tampered with her code, and now, not even she could predict what would happen next. The missiles were primed. The countdown had begun. Rhea's fingers flew across the small handheld console she had hidden in the wall panel. Sweat beaded on her brow as she tried to override the expanding targeting matrix. But every time she made progress, the system adapted like it was thinking ahead of her. That wasn't possible. Unless someone else was in the system. Her heart sank. She hadn't been the only one watching the missile controls. A second user ID flashed across her screen, hidden. Masked, but not hers. Someone had accessed her code and rewritten its parameters, turning a defensive protocol into a full-scale threat. The ship's AI, once dormant, was now being manipulated. And it wasn't just targeting the approaching enemy crafts. SIT was preparing to launch on any vessel within range, including friendly units. On the bridge, the admiral's comms lit up with frantic transmissions from nearby patrol fleets. They had detected the missile system's activation and were preparing countermeasures. The Navy believed the battleship had been hijacked. They were ready to sink it if necessary. The admiral's eyes narrowed. Who else had access to the old core files? He demanded. No one answered, but deep in the data bay, hidden behind encrypted tunnels of code, Rhea found something chilling on old signature. One she remembered from her academy days. Commander Voss. He had vanished 2 years ago during a classified mission. Everyone assumed he was dead. But now his ID was back online, buried inside the ship's missile system like a ghost from the past. He had been waiting, using the system as a trap. Rhea's breath caught. This wasn't just about stopping a threat. It was about exposing a betrayal. Someone from within their own ranks had planned this, and now, with seconds left on the countdown, missiles armed, and the Navy closing in with orders to destroy the ship, she had to make a choice. But was she already too late? The ship trembled as the first missile bay reached full launch readiness. Rhea knew she had only one shot. She rerouted power from non-essential systems, forcing a manual override and isolating the corrupted code. Her screen flickered, nearly blacking out. Then it opened a back door she had secretly built during her early tests, something no one else knew existed. She took a breath, steadied her shaking hands, and typed in the final command. In the same moment, the enemy vessels locked on with their weapons. The admiral's cum crackled. "You have 60 seconds to disarm or we engage." But Rhea wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the screen as the override took hold. The system froze. For a moment, everything went still. No lights, no sounds, just silence. Then a sharp click. The targeting system reset. Missiles halted mid-sequence. Lockdowns re-engaged. She had done it. Cheers erupted in the lower decks. On the bridge, the admiral released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Across the Navy Channel, nearby ships stood down. For a second, it looked like everything was over. But just as Rhea stood up from the console, ready to report to the bridge, a final message appeared on her screen. "Well done, Rhea. You passed the test." Her eyes widened. Suddenly, all the corrupted code vanished, wiped clean in a single stroke. The second user ID, the one linked to the missing Commander Voss, dissolved completely. It hadn't been a hostile breach. It had been planted as a simulation, an unauthorized one. Rhea wasn't fighting an enemy. She had been part of a hidden Navy evaluation designed to find operatives capable of controlling next-gen defense systems under extreme pressure. Except no one told her. The Admiral's voice rang through the comm. "Cadet Rhea, report to the command deck. Immediately." She didn't know whether to be angry, honored, or both. But as she stepped out into the corridor, one thing was certain. Navy would never see her the same way again, and neither would she. As Rhea stepped onto the bridge, the room fell silent. The Admiral turned toward her, his expression unreadable. For a long second, no one spoke. Then he nodded slowly. "You weren't expelled," he said quietly. "You were being watched." Rhea didn't respond. Her mind was still spinning, trying to process it all. The threats, the betrayal, the false expulsion, every moment had felt real. And that was the point. They had designed the entire scenario to test her instincts under pressure, to see if she would protect the ship without needing orders.